Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Profitable Home Services Podcast. I'm so glad that you chose to join us again today. Well, I've got something really special planned for you. I'm pretty excited to bring it to you today. I have asked Joe Pallo to come back once again. Yes, I know we've heard from him 2 different times already, but every time I meet with him, he just comes up with something else that blows my socks off. So I want to bring him back again. And today we're going to head in a little bit different direction and look at you as the leader of your team and the hidden profit leaks that can come from that area. So with all of that said, welcome back, Joe. Thank you for joining us again today.
Thanks, Ann. I love being here, love partnering and working with you. I've been on so often, I'm wondering if I'm starting to get emails coming to you because I've been there so much. So if I do, just forward them my way. But
I will. Yeah, I'll
okay.
make sure all your fan club is getting your mail.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We had talked yesterday or the other day, and actually a couple of times about when we bring on new people and new relationships, we make a lot of assumptions.
We
And I
do.
think, would you agree with when we hire somebody, one of the biggest expenses we have is our payroll, is our people.
It is probably the biggest expense that every home service business has.
Got it.
Is their people.
Would you take it a step further and say most of your headaches are coming from people too?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
I hear all the time from so many of my coaching member, as well as the people out there I talked about in the home services community, that sometimes they feel like they're just running an adult daycare center.
Yes. Yep.
And
Yep.
that's not what they signed up for.
Yep. And then there's that element that surprises them. I truly believe that hiring people is one of the purest forms of gambling there is. We just never really know. It just, you never really know. But there are some things I think we can do to help manage that process a little bit better. If it's all right, I'm going to kind of jump in and out of role play and use you as you're my employee.
Okay.
Let's just say you're a newer employee.
Okay.
And we want to, and this conversation could also be done with your existing employees, but it's just as valuable with accounts, your new clients, existing clients. And it's called the expectation talk. And I have this, and you'll remember when we started working together, I had this one of the first conversations with every one of my clients. And let's just say if we were on that call, I said, hey, Diane, one thing I tried to do, begin our first call. So I'll make sure we have good, clear expectations. There are always some things we assume that I'm going to do and you're going to do. Is it all right if we take a couple of minutes and just talk about some expectations?
Sure. Go for it, Joe.
And they're pretty simple. And maybe you kind of know, duh, I know that, but let's just make sure we cover it all. The first thing that you can count on me to do, these are expectations, again, things you can count on me to do, is I'll do what I say I'm going to do. If I tell you you're going to get an email within 48 hours of having a call, you're going to get an email within 48 hours. I'm just wired that way. So you can count on me that I'll do what I say I'm going to do. The second expectation, I know your industry. I know you have high highs and low lows. When bad things happen, we can talk about it. Or if you lose a deal, we can talk about it. But I'm not going to dwell on it. In other words, you can count on me that I'll always have a positive attitude. Is that all right?
That's a relief.
Cool. I'm just wired that way anyway, so that's not a biggie. Third expectation, it's a big one, at least in my mind, is Diane, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do or have done before. And I'll bounce that back to you. Why would that be important?
Coming at it from somebody who's just signed up for one of your coaching programs, that would be important to me to know that you actually know the material that you're supposed to be sharing with me. That it's not just all theory. You didn't pick up a book, read it, and now here I am. Ta-da, I'm a coach. But you've actually implemented into your own business and in your own life.
Awesome. Yeah, it's credibility. It's actually, if you look at it this way, let's just say that I'm coaching you on how to get referrals, and that's coming up for us too, just a sidebar. If I'm personally not out getting referrals, how can I hold you accountable? Our minds just don't work that way.
No, they don't.
In other words, I can pretty much set up my business where I'm just coaching. I have to sell. I have certain activities and metrics that I impose on myself just so I can hold my clients accountable. But that's a big thing. I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do or I've done before.
Okay.
The other expectation is I know your business and line of work, you have high highs and low lows. Uh, there are times in those lows, we lose belief in ourselves. I don't care how tenured you are, how experienced you are. A couple of times in our career, we wonder like, how in the heck am I going to do this again? Well, you can count on me that I'll believe in you. And even though we just started working together, I don't know you that well. I can say that on the grounds that you have goals, it's the SMART goals, the goals that are written, goals that are specific, goals that are, hang on, let me turn off my, sorry, didn't turn off my do not disturb. Goals that are written specific, have a due date, review daily. If we have that, you can count on me to believe in you. And sometimes we just need someone a little bit removed to help us bring us back into focus. Does that make sense?
You bet. That makes a lot
Okay.
of sense. And on the sidebar, you actually did that for me. About 2 months ago, I had the rug pulled out from under my feet here in my office. And one of our next calls, there was probably a few tears dripping off my chin as we had our call, but you were able to give me a little bit different perspective. And that was very much appreciated. Something I couldn't see myself because I was stuck in this, what am I going to do mode? How am I going to make this all work?
Got it. What we say up here in Minnesota, those aren't tears. That's just like a little mini dust storm. That's all that is.
Oh.
Mini dust storm. But those are expectations or things you can count on me to do. If it's all right, these are some things I like to be able to count on you to do. And it's pretty much just the inverse of what we have that I'd like to be able to count on you that you'll do what you say you're going to do. On our calls, we're going to have action items. And it doesn't matter to me when you say, yeah, I can get it done by this date. In my mind, it's done. And not saying it's happening here, but this happened a couple of years ago. I was working with a guy out east making $1 million a year. He wasn't doing his action items. So literally on our next call, I said, you know what? I'm going to put you on speakerphone. I'm going to work on something else. I actually took our coaching time for him to do his action items. And he goes, Pallo, you're making me mad, but that's what I need. So I'd like to be able to count on you that you'll do what you say you're going to do. Second, another expectation I'd like to be able to count on you. You and I need some type of metric we need to track. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. There's 100 ways of getting across town, but we need something to know that, hey, I had a good week. Hey, I had a bad week. We need some sort of speedometer. We'll talk about that later up, but we want to make sure we have some accountability that's pertinent and measurable for you and the growth of your business. Is that all right?
It is. I like that.
Got it. Another expectation is that you be open-minded, be coachable, not too worried about that. And then the last one is we'll set up a time every other week for our calls. Let's just strive to make sure we're on time for our calls. That seem fair?
I think those are all completely fair and very doable.
And if something pops up, let's strive to give each other 24-hour notice.
Okay.
Okay. Now, just curious, I mean, the expectations, both mine and yours, anything you want to add to it?
No, I think that covers it pretty well.
Okay. Okay, let's stop here. We'll step out of role play.
Okay.
Where these expectations, they're pretty generic. I think any of your listeners can take this and apply it to whatever their business with their clients or their employees. We have to fine tune it a little bit, but where they came from were the biggest problems I was dealing with coaching. So I put in the expectations. People not doing what they say they were going to do is number one, because that was the biggest problem. But I go first with my expectations. Once I do that, reciprocity kicks in. Now I can ask them to do it. So if anyone has another problem consistently with your employees or with your clients, bake that into your expectation, what they can count on you to do, so you can flip it. And now we can count on them to do it. Is that making sense?
It's a genius to go first and then have them go second. Because how in the world can they say no?
And actually, the other part is giving them some opportunity, some buy-in. Hey, anything you want to add to it? Because you may hear some cool things. Okay, yeah, I didn't think about that. That'd be good for you. And maybe it's generic or just relevant to that particular client. So that's kind of where they came from. I'm going to jump back in the role play, but that's where the expectations came from, were problems that I was dealing with on my end. I just flipped it over and said, you can count on me to not do those things. And now I can count on them to do it. So we're back in the role play, and we just went through it. You didn't have any questions of expectations?
No, sounds good to me.
Good. Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Kind of maybe it's even a goofy question, but hypothetically, it may be 5 days down the road, maybe 5 weeks down, maybe 5 years down the road. Diane, what should I say or what should I do you're not doing something you said you were going to do?
Wow. Uh, I think, Joe, I would like an email from you reminding me that I haven't gotten something done and
Okay.
that I need to have it by such and such a date or time. I'm very deadline driven. And
Okay.
so if I know I have a deadline, it makes it easier to reprioritize what is sitting on my overflow plate and be able to do that for you.
Got it. So if I hear you right, you given me permission to hold you accountable
Yes.
by email. All right.
Yes.
Now let's take a sidebar here. We'll step out of the role play. That is why I have this whole expectation talk. That question is the critical question. All of me sharing the expectations, getting theirs, and them getting mine sets the table for that critical question. What should I say or what should I do if you're not doing something you said you were going to do? That's what I want to ask. Now, you gave me a lot of answers. 90% of the time, I'm going to say what else because I really want that clear. And I'm taking notes of that because that's what I need to hold them accountable. That's why I have that whole question. It's that critical question is the only reason why I even need the expectations, because I look at it, that expectation talk, let's just say it's old school or back in a conference room, a new employee or even a new client, we're going through that. That's a valuable conversation, but the value stays in the room. The critical question, what should I say or what should I do if you're not doing something you said you were going to do, allows me to bring it forward. So let's say it's 5 months down the road and you're not acting like you normally do and you're not doing your action items. I can say, hey, Diane, you remember when we started about 5 months ago? You'll say, yeah. We had that
Yeah.
conversation about expectations. You'll say, yeah. And I asked you at the end, I said, what should I do or what should I say if you're not doing something you said? What did you tell me? Told me
I
to,
told you to send an email.
I'm sending you an email. We're having a conversation.
Right.
I'm using your words to hold you accountable. You can't get mad at me. It's your words. It's a purely safe spot. It's not through, and I kind of look at it. It's we can motivate or hold you accountable. There's a carrot or a stick. I'm not really a stick guy. I'm pretty much going to say, hey, your activity or your goals are up here. Your activity's down here. Which one do you want to change? That's my job. So
I could
that
see all kinds of uses for that type of a thought, not just in a customer client type relationship, but employees, family members, even
yep,
vendors. I mean, this could go all kinds of places.
it's very transferable. And actually, what it's doing, it's engaging people emotionally instead of just going through the logic of the expectations, which are important. We have to get them emotionally engaged. And you know me, I don't speak, teach, sell, train, or coach until I get people emotionally engaged. It doesn't make any sense. We have no buy-in. By me asking that critical question, what should I say? What should I do? You're not doing something you said you were going to do. That's where the money is. That's where I need to get to. That, and again, you are right. This works with new employees. You can work with existing employees. You can, hey, have a weekly meeting and or a bi-weekly meeting and say, hey, just want to throw something else. We've been working together for a couple of years. Just heard this from a coach. He's a really brilliant coach. You can say that if you want. But I just want to talk about expectations. Even though we've worked together, let's just make sure we're on the same page and just rattle them off to it. You can have it written down in front of you. That's not a big deal. But you notice one thing I did do with this, and it's important. I didn't just read them off and check a box. I told a story, gave an example. You have to do that. Make them come alive, make them resonate with them, get them emotionally engaged with giving them clear examples of what it could or could look like. That's
This
just
is,
kind of a way of, again, getting people emotionally engaged. In a sense, it's a sale.
it is. This is good stuff. Keep going, Joe.
All right. I'm going to take this a step further, maybe a little bit of a review. And I'm going to go in a purely sales topic right now for the first, maybe next 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to flip that in a minute. So even though it may be a review of what we talked about before, we're going to come back to it. Is that all right?
You bet.
Okay. We've had these meetings. Let's just say it's with a new client, and it's a great meeting on a scale of 1 to 10. You know, he's laughing at your jokes, he's asking questions, and he says, "Joe, can you come back in 2 weeks? I want to see a proposal." It's a great meeting. We've had them, right? We come back in 2 weeks, and that meeting's different. You thought
Always.
it was a home run. You're actually mentally, you may have even spent the money, and this meeting's cold. I mean, he's got his arms crossed and he's looking at his watch and he's looking at his computer. And you walk out of there, hey, when you come back in 2 weeks, I need to think about it. We've had those meetings, right?
Yes.
And people say, what am I doing wrong at the second meeting? Well, the problem happens at the first meeting. And if I could share my screen, I kind of got a graph for it. Can you see my screen?
I do. Yep.
Okay. Whoops. Here we go. It's called the buying curve. And here's what it really looks like. The vertical line, that's emotional and logical interest. There's no interest down here, and it goes up to 10. There's a lot of interest. This is just increments of time. Now, in sales, we need two sales that need to be sold, or two buckets that need to be filled. The logical bucket, the emotional bucket. The logical line, or the logical bucket, that is filled with my, here we go, with my voice. I'm the expert. And I have to say enough to get them emotionally engaged, or I'm sorry, logically engaged, to get them to fill up that bucket. We get both buckets full, we'll get the next step. Okay. Again, the logical bucket is filled with my voice. I'm the expert. There's an emotional bucket that's filled with their voice. And emotions are weird and fickle things, and they change. It doesn't make sense. But it's filled with their voice. It's what they want and why they want it. The first meeting, we had both buckets filled. But let's talk about the buckets. The logical bucket is finite. It's like if you have a bucket of sand, could you put more sand in the bucket?
Not once it's full.
No, okay. You have a client logically sold. Can you sell logic anymore?
No.
Same thing. The emotional bucket, again, filled with my or their voice, my client's or prospect's voice, that has holes in it. So when I left that first meeting, I had both buckets filled. When I come back in 2 weeks, and they said, we started talking about it, the emotional bucket's empty. And 9 times out of 10, we go with logic, and they're not going to go anywhere. Is that making sense?
It is.
So
because I've encountered those meetings in my past, and you are wondering what happened.
Yeah.
I thought this was a great thing.
They're half sold. Our job is to go back and get them emotionally engaged. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's just look, say it's the first sales call. Here's what it kind of looks like. We've been there where we come in and we do the brag about how good and great and wonderful I am. We do the show up, throw up, and puke. We're actually losing their interest. They're going down. They don't care. You've heard me say this on our first call, and I say it on all my calls first. Hey, is it all right if I skip over the part where I brag about how good and great and wonderful I am? Love saying that because no one cares. But that's what happens when we come in and we start bragging about our company. We lose them. Then we start asking questions about what the fact finding, and that gets them logically filled. We find out what they have, what they want, and all the logical piece. We fill up that logical bucket. I think we do a pretty good job there. But what happens is people start closing right there. They're closed below the emotional line. They're not going to buy until we get them emotionally engaged. So if we start asking questions about what they want and why they want it, that gets them above the emotional line. This is the buying line. They're not going to buy until we get them above that line. And actually, this is where we need to close. There's a limited amount of time when we're above the line where we need to close on the next step, not the whole product, the next step or whatever. We've also been there where we've talked past the close. That's where we start going down below this line. Is this making sense for you, Diane?
It is. And I'm very thankful for the graphics. So for those of you that are just listening audio only, this podcast is also on YouTube where you can see the graphics that Joe is sharing with us.
Thanks. Now, what we want to look at is this area where they're curving up. That's our job as a salesperson. That's what we want to focus in on. And there's a system, the earning system, where we get them logically engaged, and digging questions where we get them emotionally engaged. And we've reviewed this, but the earning piece is basically an acronym because in sales, we think we have a plan, but as soon as the sales call starts, you take the plan, chuck it out the window. We don't know. Earning is simply we need to earn the right to ask for the next step. And each letter stands for a part of the sale. We don't have to use them all. We can skip around, and some may not apply, but at least we have them here. But basically, E just stands for we need to evaluate their current reality. That's our data gather. Mentally, I look at it. If I'm selling a similar product, an apples and apples comparison, I have to ask enough questions so I know what type of apples they have. And I have to ask enough questions so the person sitting across the table knows that I know what type of apples they have. If I'm selling them something different, apples, oranges, something new, I still need to ask enough questions so I know what they're starting with. And they still need to know that I know what we're starting with. So E is evaluate the current reality. And I think as salespeople, we do a pretty good job on that part. A is simply what are the advantages? What do they like about their current vendor? What do they like about my competitor? And I get pushback saying, Joe, I don't want to ask that. I'm like talking them into staying with their current vendor. And I love asking that question for a couple of reasons. One, I get different results. My clients get different results because we do things different. No one else is asking, what do they like about it? Two, that screams confidence. Business is given the confident people. I'm not afraid to go to the kitchen. I'm going right where it's hot. What do you like about your current vendor? That's a great question to ask. The biggest reason, they're telling me they're hot buttons. Whatever they like about what they currently have, I got to have that too. Back in my mind, I'm thinking, ding, ding, ding. I got to sell that in either 5 minutes or 5 weeks or 5 months. And I'm not going to know what their hot buttons are unless they ask them. That's a big piece. What are the advantages? R, again, we're going through earning. R is revise. What do they want to change? This is the major reason why they're going to go forward. And I don't lead off with it, but I need them telling me, what do they want to change? And I also personally think if I'm talking to somebody, they've got a problem with their personal sales or their team or their company's not growing. Otherwise, I would not be there. We're too busy. That's just the society we're in. So EAR, revise. N, no. Who can say no to this? Who else needs to be involved? What are the other decision makers? That's a legitimate question. And we have every right to ask that because it's common where some people hesitant. Hey, just curious, when you have decisions of this magnitude, who else needs to be involved?
So,
There
Joe,
are some times, I'm sorry.
what do you do when they plop a partner, somebody in there that you're not aware of, or a spouse or something at that point? Do
Okay.
you disengage or do you keep going?
That's probably there's never a one cut and dried plan, but my first thought is I don't want to go further if I can. Sometimes you can't, but I will try to disengage that conversation and pull back till we get that person there.
Okay.
Again, sometimes you can't, but that's my first thought. I may go further along, but say until I get into the more parameters, I can't really give you the pricing yet, but let's set up another meeting. We'll get everybody here and have that other person here. Then we can go through it all.
Okay.
So again, you can't do that all the time. Sometimes you're stuck, but that's really where you want to be. A lot of times, if you're selling to a government or a public, they do spreadsheet selling where they try to distance it. It's committee. You're kind of stuck with that, but just be aware of that one. That's probably the one you skip over the most. So EARNI. If you want one idea that everyone can apply tomorrow, it's this one. Interpret back what they just said. And I'll say, hey, it sounds like this. Hey, Diane, just if it's all right, just for clarity, can I take a few minutes to just repeat back what I heard to make sure I got it on the same page? They're going to say yes. And just go back through and talk about everything about their evaluating the current reality, repeating their words. Then you talk about what they like about it. Then you talk about what they want to change and who else needs to be involved. That's huge. And you'll start hearing like, well, crap, Pallo, you said better than I did. And mentally, I'm on the same side of the table as they are, and I have not even started selling. What a great spot to be in. They don't even know what I do yet. Making sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Cool. That's it. Interpret back, a key piece. Then the second N, nothing. What if nothing changes? That is needed because that gets a sense of urgency. And on that question, I'm going to push back 98% of the time. I'm going to say what else to whatever they say, because I need to create that. Emotions are the sense of urgency. That's an emotion that's filling up that emotional bucket. I want to make sure I get some good answers out of that. I'm not going to let them off the hook. I'm not going to ask it and move on. I'm going to keep there, create a little pain. And then the G is the gain. What's the pay value? If we fix this problem, it took 2 hours out of your week, what would you do with those 2 hours? What would you gain? What would that look like? So that is the earning piece, which gets them up, fills up the logical bucket. This is the emotional, or the digging questions, or the emotional bucket is filled with what I call digging questions. A digging question is just basically, I'm thinking whatever they're saying. Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? And you can't keep saying that because that's creepy and weird. So digging questions are basically getting them to say what they want and why they want it in different ways. And it's their voice filling up their emotional bucket.
So think of a small child and all the questions that they ask.
It's not the first time I've been compared to a small child, Dan. That happens quite often. But the what else? Can you give me an example? Can you say that again? Tell me more about that. What does that look like? How so? Help me out with that. I will ask digging question after digging question after digging question, because that's what's using their voice, filling up their emotional bucket. I'm not going to go forward. Doesn't make sense to even close until you have them telling you what they want and why. The earning system with the dig-in questions, you get them both covered. And this is what has to be done at the first meeting. So go ahead.
I'll say that some people are naturally more curious than others. I fall in that second bucket. I'm not a super curious person. So I have typed up your dig-in questions and they are taped to the bottom of my monitor to remind me to ask more questions, because I have this really bad habit of just going for just the facts. Just give me the facts and I got to move on, and not filling up that emotional bucket well enough in any conversation that I have. I'm busy. I just want the facts. I'll get you an answer and move on to the next thing. And so this is causing me to stop and slow down, listen to them a little bit better, ask a couple questions in any conversation that I'm having. So your dig-in questions are invaluable.
No question. And you want to go logical. Our clients want to go logical. It's hard not to.
It is.
You want to do that. And we really have to slow down. I would actually, as your coach, when you have the dig-in questions, and this may be an action item for you. Sorry to put you on the spot here. I want you to put a little check mark throughout the week how many times you've asked a dig-in question.
Oh, wow.
Kind of use that as a speedometer. And basically, again, we need that filled to get the next step. Let's go back to my example. We have that great first meeting. Both buckets are full. When we come back in 2 weeks or 2 months with our proposal, with our logic, and they want to talk logic and I want to talk logic and I did all this work, if we just go logical, that emotional bucket's empty. So what I coach people on, before you do that, say, hey, I got your stuff here. I got your proposal. Before I do that, Diane, can we just go back and touch on a few things we said last week? And then you start bringing up some of their things that they put in that emotional bucket. That's how we get them re-engaged. And I need them to say it the second time at the second meeting before I show them my product.
So we need to be taking good notes.
Furious.
As we're talking to these people.
Absolutely. Because that's what you're going to close on.
Right.
And this happens in every meeting. You can have a selling cycle that has, 6 months. It's incrementally, we're doing this every single time. Always come back and check. And I got to touch on this too. You have clients we've worked with for a while. We have quote unquote control over. Their trust in you is so high. I mean, in that emotional bucket, there's a thing called trust that fills up the holes. That's with your existing clients. We still got to check on it, but just be aware there are some clients that you may not have to do, some good clients that just trust you. We got to still want to hear it, but it's not as relevant as the newer clients.
Okay.
And also another side benefit of this, let's just say, Diane, you and I are on a sales call and we're on point. You're going through the earning system and you're asking all these questions. And you're asking the whole way through the earning piece. You're asking digging questions after digging question. We recorded that whole conversation. And then we come back to your office and we play it back, but we took out your voice. You're left with your client saying what they're currently doing, what they like about it, what they want to change, who's in charge, what happens if they don't do anything, and why. Just do that. You've eliminated all the hassle of selling. They've just told you how to sell them. It's a part of my mantra, and you've heard me say this. Whoever is talking is buying. In a selling situation, if I'm talking more than you are, I'm literally buying your objections. If I get you talking more than me, buying whatever's in my bag. And this is a way to do that. Or I'll say this, doctors can't fix you until you tell them how or why. You literally have to tell your doctors what's wrong. You're not going to take the prescription until you get to tell them all that. And you're not going to have any recommendations. They're not going to know. Well, doctors can't fix you until you tell them how or why. We can't sell anyone until they tell us how or why. This all makes sense in the sales arena. I'm a firm believer if there's a principle that works really good in this piece, it's going to work over here. What if we took this into our leadership? How we lead people?
That sounds interesting, but tell me more.
Think about it. Most of us, let's say you have a sales team or have people, we logically lead our people. Hey, get your numbers up, get your dials up. Just go to, that's just like selling logic to someone else. They're not going to do anything until we get them emotionally engaged. We go back. This could be a great conversation at a weekly meeting. This could be the outline for every weekly meeting or every one-on-one meeting. Evaluate the current reality. Hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going good? What's going good this week? What are some things you want to change? No, okay, you can skip that one. All right, so if I heard what you're saying, this is what you're currently doing. This is what's going really well. These are some things you need to work on. Good. What are you going to do? What's going to change this week? What if nothing changes? This is a one-on-one conversation for every single employee, existing clients too. But the part I think we miss as leaders, it's these digging questions during the one-on-ones. That's what we need to have with our people. It is critically important for them to know that I know, and I'm taking the time to know what they want and why they want it. I mean, it goes with the clarity of their vision and their goals. Sometimes people logically do goals. They don't emotionally attach anything to their goals. Well, this is a way you work with people. If your team members or your clients see you as a vehicle to help them get what they want and why they want it, that's pretty good retention. So and it's the right way to lead people.
This could be the difference between an employee going, I have to meet these goals because cranky old boss over there will get on me if I don't.
Right.
Versus I want to meet these goals because I will get whatever from it. What's in it for me.
It's the emotional piece. And you know this, that all of my clients, I'm a little bit old school, they make a vision board. It's a piece of cork with a frame around it, and it's pictures of what they want. And it's not just work related, it's financial, spiritual, emotional, social. That's the part that I need to leverage their thinking, to change their thinking, that changes their activity. Otherwise, I'm just going logic, and that's not going to work. Just like people don't buy just on logic. It is needed. I'm not poo-pooing that. It has to logically make sense. But the emotional piece makes it happen. Makes it happen with our sale, makes it happen with our one-on-ones, and it's even with us personally.
I can think of an example of one of my employees who I've gotten comfortable with that person in their position, and I'm not spending a lot of one-on-one time with them anymore because they're comfortable with what they're doing. They know what they're doing. This makes me think I need to be checking in on them periodically and asking some of these dig-in type questions to keep them engaged.
Let me ask a question. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
You have an employee that's doing good, but kind of on their own, and you know, the squeaky wheel gets all the attention. They aren't getting any attention. What if that was a client? Would you let that happen then? It's a good client. Would you let them be, oh, they're fine, I don't have to worry about them?
No, I wouldn't.
That's the same piece.
Yeah. Wow.
If we start treating our employees like our clients, that's pretty big. And look at all the expense we put in with employees. When we talked about the expectation talk, I mean, employees are your number one expense. Number one and number two expense, your payroll. That's a huge piece. Let's take care of that. Because if they go somewhere else, if they don't think if you checked out or just, oh, I don't even care, they're going to start looking somewhere else.
And then you get to go through all the hurdles of trying to fill that position again.
Yep.
The hiring costs, the training costs, all that stuff. And we all know how expensive that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in today's economy, there's so often that they'll jump ship for 50 cents an hour or $1 an hour. They'll jump ship. And then we're like, well, what happened? Why did they leave?
Yep. But if you take that same employee and they know about their family goals and where they want to go, and they want their wife to be able to stay home from work, or they want to get a new pool in the backyard for the kids or whatever it is, if they know we're aware of that, they're not going to get that anywhere else. I mean, really what we're on, your employees think, Diane, you are the vehicle for them to get what they want. And it's the right way to work with people. It's the right way to sell people. I mean, we go through the earning piece and the digging questions. How confident are you when you're closing that step? You're closing, if you go through the earning piece with the digging questions, closing simply is logistics. It's just like, well, where do people say, okay, what do I need to do next? I don't have to close them. They've closed themselves. It's such a way to close more confidently because there's no pressure. There's no ickiness in it. Same
So
thing holds true with leadership.
So we're basically doing the same program with your team, and you're closing in the same manner for
Absolutely.
the most part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you
Wow.
combine that with the critical question. Now you kind of got it all bundled up. We got what they should do, why they want it, and we have the ability to hold them accountable. That's a good spot to be in. I do try to simplify things pretty much, but that's just kind of how my mind works. It's helping them figure out what they want and why they want it. Whether it's true in new clients, whether it's true with existing clients, whether it's true with new employees or existing employees or vendors or contractors, there's limitless ways. This could be a conversation that Diane, you could have with your client saying, hey, your first meeting, go through the expectation talk and ask them and get their permission. You can have a document. I have some clients have a document. You don't have to have it signed, but hey, these are things you can count on me to do. These are things I'd like to be able to count on you to do, and zip it over to them. Let them see it.
This is powerful stuff, Joe. This is why I keep bringing you back.
Well, I kind of like it. I'll be honest. I kind of enjoy doing it. So, but it's just in my mind, it's the same process. And what I found when clients go through the earning process, and there's a free download, convertsalesfaster.com. That'll go through the earning piece, a download for you, convertsalesfaster.com. But when people try it, and we talk again on our next call, like, wow, that really works. It's tip of the iceberg. There is so much more to getting them emotionally engaged than we forget. And it just gets more and more. I will add one other thing that's true in both environments, whether it's with clients or with employees, is if they ask a question, Joe, do you do executive level coaching for individuals or teams? And I can say, yeah, I do it all the time. It's what I specialize in. I just did it yesterday. If they ask a question, most of us just boom, fire off and answer that question. I ask, you don't do that. Someone says, Joe, do you do executive level coaching? I say, well, yeah, that's what I do, but just curious, maybe a goofy question. Well, why did you ask that? In other words, during this process, if they ask a question, what they ask is important. Why they ask it is extremely important. And we skip that step.
All the time.
It's like, I want to, before I answer your question, I want to make sure I answer your question in the right context. Why is that important to you? And be quiet and watch how much more information they give you, how much better your answer is going to be and more zeroed in than just, yeah, I do coaching. You miss it. It is huge that I need to take the time because something happened in their past that caused them to ask that question. I'm going to know what that is before I answer it. So what they ask is important. Why they ask it is extremely important.
This has been really good stuff. And I'm so glad that we were able to take this concept that we talked about in your first episode and bring it almost full circle over to now in the team environment. Mm-hmm. And just as a sidebar, I pulled Joe into one of my coaching calls with my coaching group, and we were able to do the expectation call with one of my coaching members who's having some challenges with his team. And he was pretty excited to have new concepts and new ideas to try on his own team and see if we couldn't start getting some better results. So when I saw Joe do that with my own coaching client with his team, like, Joe, you got to come back and share this with more people than just, a couple people here.
Yeah. And I think it was really, and that's how I really try to teach that is we all understand the sales aspect a lot quicker because we've been there, done it, and we get it. So I build off of that and I go pretty heavy on that, but it's real easy flip to go to leadership. But that's just how our minds work. If I just jump in with leadership, it takes too much longer, but
it's hard.
Yeah. But this way, well, yeah, of course, I wouldn't treat my clients that way. I want to know more about it. And I want to go logic with my clients. Naturally, I'm going to go logic with my people. Hey, get your dials up, get your hours up, whatever the activity is. We look at metrics. I mean, when I'm doing one-on-ones, or if I'm in a leadership role, when I've been a leader, my goal is to get the conversation off of the metrics, off of the numbers. I need to know what they are at the start, but I want to get them away from that as quick as I can onto what they want and why they want it, because that's when I'm going to get a change in their activity and a change in their thinking. I want to get the conversation off of the numbers because they know it too. Logically, they know the numbers. They're just like a client logically knows they should buy your product, but they're not going to, and they're emotionally engaged. So let's focus on the emotional piece.
And emotions is an area that so many of us struggle in. We want to come across as this credible, professional person. We know what we're doing. We know our stuff, and we forget all about the emotional piece.
Yeah. There's a good book out there. I think, I don't know if you've read the copy. I'm referencing my book. I wrote How to Sell Nothing. It's
I was
a
gonna say
logical
that
way.
your How to Sell Nothing book.
Yeah. I have to plug myself a little bit there, but it spelled out the concept and that whole, if you notice, even with our work together, this is a theme, helping people figure out what they want and why they want it.
Well, this takes, I use the word sales, from being sales to being a service. And that
Absolutely.
sales happens with your team. It happens, like we mentioned earlier, with your vendors. It happens with your subcontractors. It happens with your family.
Yep.
So we are always selling, even though we may not realize that we're selling. We sell all day long
Agreed.
as
Yeah.
we're interacting with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe, we've come to the point in the podcast where it's time to share a hidden profit leak, one that is probably going to come right from this conversation that we've just had of what's a profit leak around our team and probably being too logical. So let me drop some money in our bucket and let's tease that out a little bit.
I think, and again, it's the same idea. It's considered one of the biggest variables in how successful someone is their thinking. And thinking in the emotional relationship. And let's look at the goals of what we have with our employees. Most of those are logical. We don't take the time to get emotionally engaged with our goals, emotional connection. We need to have that emotional bucket filled, because I believe the clarity of your vision is directly proportional to how hard you're going to work. Say that again. The clarity
Say
of your
that
vision
again.
is directly proportional to how hard you're going to work. And it's not the logical part of the clarity I'm talking about. It's the emotional piece. It's with your vision board. And when we did yours, the next call, I had you walk me through that. You literally, we had took time out on our coaching call, and you sent me an image of it. We shared a screen. You talked me through each thing, because me hearing what you want is important for me, because it makes a difference on how I coach you.
Right.
But the bigger value is you hearing yourself say what you want and why you want it. Makes a big difference for you, because that gives you clarity in your thinking. That's where we want to get to. So if the profit tip is be emotionally engaged with your goals, because it touches everything else in your business.
And I'm going to add emotionally engage with every member of your team. I don't care if you're a team of 1 or 2 or a team of 50 to 100. Find a way to emotionally engage with them. And let's see, what does that do for your employee retention? We're at a time where it's hard to find good employees, where these people will come to work for us and expect to do nothing but show up and get paid. So if we've got good employees, let's protect them at all costs and increase that retention. By increasing that retention, we're reducing our hiring costs. Let's spend time with them. Let's give them the training that they want or need, preferably what they want, which hopefully is what they need, and start developing them more. Let them realize how much we care, because all of us care about our team, but we get caught up in the day-to-day activities of this has got to get done and that's got to get done, and run over and put out this fire, and oops, that contract didn't get delivered. Let's get it over to somebody. Or we got a vehicle broke down. Got to go take care of that. There's just so many things that can suck up our day. but try to schedule some time to meet with each of your team on a regular basis. And I know that that will really improve employee retention, which will save a lot of money and put that right straight to your bottom line profit.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you again, Joe, for coming back for the third time. I'll have to come up with a reason to have you back again at some point.
We'll figure something out. I'm pretty sure we'll figure something out.
Probably,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But this has been great to just take this concept coming from the sales side of the business, pulling it over to the leadership side and using the same basic concept and not having to learn something all over again, but to be able to find multiple uses for it. So thank you again. And just for those of you that are listening, Joe's book is How to Sell Nothing. It's a great book. Mine is all highlighted and notes in the margins and sticky tabs hanging out the page. To me, that's a mark of a great book. And Joe's book is certainly marked up that way. Anything else you want to tell people how, best way that they could reach out to you?
Yeah. The best way, just go to my website, sellnothing.co, not .com, just sellnothing.co. It's got links to my book on there. There's an audio version, the download for Convert Sales Faster on there. And if you want to reach out to me directly, you can do that as well.
All right. Thank you again, Joe. And
Been
for
fun.
those of you that are liking the types of topics and stuff that we're coming up with, I want to just offer you one of my tools that I use in my coaching group called my monthly nut exercise. And in there, we're able to dig in and help you identify what is the actual cost of running your business. It covers all of your overhead items, your loan payments, your owner's pay, your draws, those types of things. We put those onto this template. And then you're able to see it costs X amount of dollars per month to keep your business running. And from there, you're able to calculate at what point in the month have you covered your monthly nut. Is it on the 20th of the month, the 25th? Hopefully it's not the 29th or the 30th. And then that becomes a KPI that we can start working on and improving on it. So if let's say it is the 25th of the month and we can work and get it to be the 23rd of the month, we've just gained 2 more days of sales that are dropping to your bottom line profits. So be sure and grab your free copy. It's attached to the show notes from this podcast. And as always, thank you so much for spending time with us. We know that you're busy and we're very thankful that you chose to spend part of your day with us. So for Joe and I, thank you again and have a great rest of your day.